orchids. When you look at this orchid, can you see what its challenges are? You should have noticed that the roots are completely shriveled up, that the leaves have begun drying out and wrinkling. You should also have noticed, when you looked at the end where the flowers have grown, that the flower buds are aborting. The way you can tell that they're aborting is the very youngest of them are drying and shriveling up. These buds aren't going to flower. What could be the problem? That must be the problem. If the roots are that dry and shriveled, how is this orchid getting water? Even with the sphagnum moss being watered on a regular basis, this orchid is having a hard time getting the nourishment that it needs. Knowing that orchids live on the canopies of treetops with their roots wrapped around the branches and in the bark of the tree, I decided that it was time to give this orchid an opportunity to live like it would in the wild. So I took it out of its pot, took it out of its bark, and actually wrapped it around some driftwood. Where do you think I got the driftwood based on the problems that we're having with this orchid? You guessed it, I got that one from the beach. That piece of driftwood did not get soaked enough in fresh water and is probably holding some salt. And as the roots come in contact with the salt, they are withering and dying. What you're going to see me do is deconstruct this arrangement that I have in hopes to save this orchid from dying, even as it's flowering, which is not really recommended, but leaving it attached to this piece of driftwood with the salt will certainly kill it. We're going to take this apart, which will give you the opportunity to see how I constructed it in the first place. I'll talk you through as we go. You'll see first that we have the sphagnum moss wrapping the roots. What we'll be doing is taking the sphagnum moss off of the roots around the tree trunk of driftwood that we have here. And as we take this off, we see that the roots have very much dried out, though they're holding on quite nicely, which is what's giving me the difficulty in taking it off. What we'll do next is take this piece of driftwood and soak it properly in fresh water. We'll take the roots of the orchid off of the driftwood and take the sphagnum moss off of them and soak them in fresh water to give them the opportunity to rinse all the salt off. What we'll also do is take the driftwood and put it into fresh water to let it soak for a while longer. And perhaps this piece of driftwood can still be used for a future orchid. There's our orchid soaking, rinsing, with the hopes of coming back and living a rich and happy orchid life. So our orchid was living in this beautiful piece of Asian pottery, with a lovely scene inside, clearly made to hold a plant based on the holes and the way that the bowl itself is designed. And now our orchid will move on to live in a modern container. The materials that we'll be using to hold the orchid instead of bark are going to be a concoction developed by A&P Orchids in Swansea, Massachusetts. If you haven't been to A&P Orchids, you are missing a treat. This material is made of perlite, rock wool, and styrofoam, and a secretly well-guarded mystery of percentages designed to care for orchids, to give them the air that they need in their roots, and yet deliver water to them as well. This material is something that we'll hope will bring this orchid back to life. So here's our lovely orchid. Cleaned roots, new growing medium, rinsed of salt, with an opportunity to grow, and already a new flower bud growing along the side. What is the moral of the story? Always admit your mistakes. Be honest and truthful when you realize you've made a mistake. And if you have the opportunity to improve, hopefully this orchid will continue to thrive and grow well. Enjoy!